Perfect. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call. McKee here, Schultz. Here. Bottom is en route somewhere, potentially, or potentially excused, one of the two. Varenkamp.
Here, I think.
Nichols.
Here.
Perfect. I'd like to stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. On to agenda approval. Staff, I know there's quite a few tweaks.
Yes, Mayor. So we have an addition of item 6C, accepting a partnership plaque that we received from Rockford Area Schools. Item 7D has been updated, and also in talking with our lawyer, would ask with approval that we still have a couple minor little language tweaks. So when you pass that, we've got a few little things, happy to glad changes on that.
Do you need us to pull it and authorize that, or? Okay,
Is that necessary, John?
no.
Item 7I, we have an update for that one. Item 7U, we had an update. And then we added items 7Y, 7Z, 7AA, and 7BB. We had an update to 9B. Items 14A, 1, 2, and 3 have been removed. Item 14B1 was removed, and item 14B2 was added. And I just got updated, items 7A and 7B were updated as well.
Sounds good. Anything from council? One thing that came up, I think I'd like to move 9A and table it to the May 9th council meeting.
I'd second that.
Okay. So with Jay's updates and that, is there anything else?
Are we going to do anything beyond moving it? Like promote again for additional?
We can have that conversation.
Okay. Do you want to have that today under 9A or?
Staff still has it live, and so
Okay.
we can extend that, understanding that the intention is to discuss it on the 9th.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Commission representatives, we have Commissioner Lanterman here from Planning and Michelle here from staff and Parks and Trails. Moving on to open forum. If anyone would like to speak on items not on today's agenda, Jay can walk us through that.
Yeah, we'd just like to invite you, when you come to the microphone, please state your name, your address, something not on the agenda, and ask that you address the dais, address the council, whatever it is you'd like to say. Open it up if anybody would like to speak on anything not on the agenda.
All good?
We received no cards and no emails, Mayor.
Sounds good. Then we will go on to item 6, presentations. We have a few, and we will start with recognizing Councilor Schultz, who unfortunately, I'm sure as many of you know, is leaving us after this meeting. And so I'm going to read a resolution we have honoring Councilor Schultz, and this is a very, it seems long compared to a lot of resolutions, but it's a very pared down list of highlights of accomplishments that he's had, in 10 years or so here on council and commissions. So resolution honoring outgoing council member Alan Schultz. Whereas Alan Schultz was appointed on March 27th, 2014 to a vacant seat on the Planning Commission from 2014 to 2016, and whereas Alan Schultz was reappointed on February 28th, 2016 to the Planning Commission and served as vice chair through September 6, 2018, and whereas Alan Schultz was elected as a council member at the November 6, 2018 general election and served on the city council for a 4-year term expiring December 31st, 2022. And whereas Alan Schultz was re-elected as a city council member at the November 8th, 2022 general election for a second four-year term to the city council. And whereas over the 10 years of service as a planning commissioner and council member, the city achieved many worthwhile and lasting accomplishments, including updating Corcoran's mission, adopting core strategies, short-term goals and action steps, community development block grant for the construction of Hope Center and Maple Hill Estates, the purchase of 60 acres of new parkland for the city and the creation of a master plan for City Park, the construction of Wildflower Park, the city's first new park in several decades, and planning for the proposed Diamond Lake Regional Trail, completion of a fire service comprehensive growth plan and Corcoran Fire Subcommittee recommendations, guiding a crime, drug, and safety committee, which resulted in the beginning of the K-9 program and enhanced investigations and commercial vehicle enforcement, received recognition as a safe city from multiple organizations, approving the remodel of City Hall, accommodating the growing staff necessary for the city, significant public infrastructure projects, including the first public water tower and water treatment facility, I-94 Dayton Parkway interchange, the downtown utility and street improvement project, and many other projects in coordination with development. Drafting of the 2030 and 2040 comprehensive plans, which has guided decision-making in the city for decades. Drafting and updating design guidelines for the city in key districts to ensure thoughtful development takes place, and additional emphasis was given to guide the Southeast District, which includes plans for a new town center surrounding a town square park. Providing guidance for the city for numerous and significant land use applications, increasing communication with an enhanced newsletter, social media presence, updated website, and emergency warning technology, updating the city's information technology systems and processes, staffing improvements including a public works director, planner, planning technician, administrative services director, city clerk, recreation supervisor, construction services supervisor, permit technician, finance manager, accounting clerk, public works superintendent, public works operations supervisor, public works administrative assistant, deputy director of public safety, detective, 2 sergeants, public works safety administrative manager, police department administrative assistant, and community service officer positions, developing and enhancing the community programs such as the annual cleanup day, firearm safety program, truck safety seminar, shop with a cop, toy and food drive, and night to unite, appointing numerous residents to commissions to ensure resident input on important topics for the city, the creation of the first mission, vision, and values for the city, continued annually refining the goals and objectives of the city to meet its needs and to look to the future, city budgets which have enhanced services while protecting the residents from significant tax increases. An example of this was the 2021 tax rate, which was the lowest tax rate since 2012, and continued efforts to maintain a flat tax rate. Reviewing and supporting many proposed developments to help shape the city of Corcoran, updating several zoning and subdivision ordinances, continued water supply planning, and conducted business through a pandemic. Municipal operations during a pandemic, reviewed the use of the CARES Act funds, and ensured the city operations continue to support the need of its residents at that time. Implementation of a new city logo for the city of Corcoran that represents Corcoran's heritage as a community. And whereas after 10 years of appointed and elected public service, the city of Corcoran wishes to recognize the time, energy, dedication, and leadership provided by Alan Schultz to the city of Corcoran. Now therefore be it resolved that Councilmember Alan Schultz is hereby honored for the outstanding and distinguished service to the city of Corcoran and its residents. I had to get it there.
That's okay.
It's almost
Okay,
done.
there we go, perfect.
This is almost gonna
Got it.
extend 5 minutes. You got that done at
Yeah.
5.
Well, it makes it sound like I did a lot, but
You
really
did.
I'm less than 1/5 of all these things on here, you know. It takes the whole council and obviously a staff that does a heavy lift of it all, so I appreciate everyone that
You're
made
humble.
these things happen.
You put a lot of work in.
Thank you.
I have an observation.
Not yet, that's on consent, yeah.
So Alan, my calculation, you have read 72,000 pages of packet, consuming 144 reams of paper, and in the accomplishments, we didn't name Officer Zeke or your participation in 2 rained-out parades.
Yeah, when Alan and I
Very
froze in the
soaked.
back of the
John's
of John's
tractor.
tractor. That was rough.
Crappy. I just want to say too that the very first person that I voted for when I moved here was you. And I went to the town hall and I'm like, Alan's the guy for me. So I'm really sad that you're leaving. If we had a vote to actually approve this, I'd vote no. I don't want you to go.
You tried last week.
I know. You're a friend of mine, a friend of Corcoran. Your heart and soul is in everything you do. You've cried a couple times.
Thanks.
And it doesn't make you bad, it makes you good. And I hate when good people leave our town. It breaks my heart. I told my wife Alan's leaving and we can't replace you. A name will be there, but we can't replace you. And I will miss you. I love you. I know you love the city of Corcoran. And it's really hard. We leave a good person here.
Well said.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well said.
There's a lot of good people in this town. Somebody will step up and take it.
But you will be missed. I hope you come back and visit us
I'll drive up and down this
Open
road
invitation.
every other week.
and come heckle us. Okay. We will move on to item 6B, which is a proclamation for National Public Service Week. I have a much shorter resolution to read this time. Whereas the city of Corcoran finds it important to recognize the work of the city staff, and whereas National Public Service Week is May 5th through 11th, 2024, and whereas as part of National Public Service Week, efforts are recognized within the city's administrative staff, including areas of administration, clerk, finance, parks and recreation, and planning, and whereas the city recognizes the efforts made enacting the city's vision and goals while providing excellent customer service to the residents and customers of the city of Corcoran. And whereas the city of Corcoran recognizes the time, energy, and dedication provided by the city's administrative staff. Now therefore be it resolved by the city of Corcoran, the city council hereby honors the administrative staff and recognizes National Public Service Week. And we will also vote on that on consent agenda. I believe it's item
X.
X. There's that, and then last item presentation, don't really have too much to say, but something to show. If anyone was here or online, I don't know if it was online because it was their meeting, but Rockford School District had reached out, the chair of their school board and their superintendent and wanted to try to host a meeting in Corcoran and maybe make it an annual thing. And so we finally got that set up and did that on April 17th, I believe. And it went great. I think for the direction of the school's heading in a great place. And they kind of surprised me midway through the meeting with a plaque for the city. Just kind of recognizing our partnership and I think building a strong relationship going forward, which I think we're on the right track for. So just wanted to show this to you all, and we'll find a good spot for it in City Hall. All right, and then on to potentially the largest consent agenda we've ever had in the city of Corcoran. Does anyone want to pull anything?
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Going once?
I'll pull D,
Okay,
just to talk about the updates.
okay. Going once? Going twice. So,
Second.
okay, we'll.
Need to make a motion.
Want to make that motion?
Yeah. Motion to approve.
So, the motion is to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, E through J, L through BB.
Second.
Already, yep.
Motion, Bodemus, second, Farrakhan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll start alphabetically, so D, Jeremy?
So I corresponded with City Administrator Tobin a bit over the course of the week on the financial management plan documents. I had a little bit of concern around tax increment financing policy and the tax abatement policy, just because they did not in the original draft fully convey our historic and philosophical reluctance to using those tools to attract development, both because philosophically, we don't want to pay for developers to develop in Corcoran. And secondly, one of the benefits that comes from development is an increase in the tax base, and we give some of that away with these tools. So I provided an edit. I feel like we should just be aware of the edit if we're going to approve. So in the tax abatement policy, under policy background, there's an add,
Do you have a page?
item B. This is page 61. It's in red if you want to look at it. I'll just read it, it's only a paragraph. So the city EDA has a strategy of market-driven development, using tax abatement sparingly, and only when a project aligns with strategic community goals without unduly sacrificing future tax revenues. Tax abatement shall be considered in cases where proposed development delivers significant public benefits, such as significant environmental preservation, long-term economic sustainability for the city, and integration with existing neighborhoods. Just as a way to further limit the scope of when we would entertain that tool. And then on page 64, the tax increment financing policy has a similar, actually I think identical paragraph, except we swap tax increment financing in instead of tax abatement.
Okay.
So I had included that in the staff report, but I thought it was apropos for us to actually include it in the policy. And so as we were talking about it, I thought that was an oversight that we were able to correct.
Makes sense. Any thoughts on that from the rest of council? John, I know that's an important issue that you've had some discussion on before.
No disagreement with Jeremy.
Okay. Then if there's nothing else, it's a hefty document, but I'm sure we all dug through it in the last week.
The only other thing I'd ask, Mayor, is as our lawyer and I spoke, there were a couple things under contracting that he corrected me on that are minor changes.
Okay.
And so I would ask in your motion that you give us, me the discretion to work with our lawyer to correct those minor things rather than bring this back and again.
Very good. We should probably make clear for the public too, the reason why this document is here is because there's sort of a laddered progression of how cities move up the financial food chain for ratings, and this is one of the missing pieces that Corcoran had. So the ultimate objective of this is to lower interest rates we would pay in future by having more of these sophisticated policies in place. So thank you, Administrator Tobin, for putting this.
And I want to reiterate to Jeremy's point, we don't have to partake in those. They just are what we would do if we had to.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Stated
We're
policy.
explaining for the public. We're explaining the mechanics, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's our strategy.
Even if I would vote against it, if it was a policy, or if it is a policy that I would vote against if we actually implemented the policy.
Right. But you're saying, because it's not that, it's.
If the stuff
just-
hits the fan, it's a backdrop.
There you go, that's one way to look at it.
And before any of these things within the policy, all of the policies talk about how it will always come to council. And so before anything would happen, there would be an applicant, if there ever was an applicant, and council would have multiple opportunities to make clear their position.
Yeah. It's a discretionary decision. This just sets the parameters for what we would consider as part of the decision. So with that, I will make a motion to approve 7D as edited with the flexibility to modify contracting as directed by the city attorney.
Do you have a second?
Second. Alan,
Okay.
you want that?
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries. Then on to the only other remaining consent item, 7K, Alan.
So I just wanted to call out a thank you to staff. This is considerable savings, thinking outside the box. And you've done this other times in the past with other pieces of equipment where we've gone after used equipment versus buying new, and it saved us considerable amounts of money over the years. So thank you very much for doing this.
Well said, yeah.
When we were considering hiring Kevin, like, how many, 6 years ago? We always wanted to keep track of the money you saved, and this is like $100,000 in this purchase alone.
Never mind, it actually will save more than that.
145,
Yeah.
50
Retrofit
grand.
it later.
In the
Yeah.
near term, we saved on the purchase because of the Shrew purchase, we saved
Yeah, we're a
probably about
small town that
125.
always like looks for an edge here. So like we're buying a used piece of equipment that some other town grew out of. And Kevin brought it to us and is like, hey, I think we ought to consider this. So I think it's really important that the taxpayers of Corcoran realize like we're not Edina, we don't just pay whatever the sticker price is. And we have a lot of good people. We buy used fire trucks and turn them into trucks that put water on our gravel roads. Like, it's crazy the things we do. So it's really important that you know that we as elected officials think that way, but our town people, the people that work here, are thinking as if they're taxpayers. Kevin doesn't work here, but he thinks as if
Doesn't
he's
live here.
Or he doesn't live here.
Works pretty hard here, John.
He doesn't live here.
If he didn't work here, that'd be even better.
That's
Actually, I
fine.
would say sometimes he does live here. I gotta keep
Yeah.
him out of the office.
Let me adjust the teleprompter quick.
Yeah. He doesn't live here, but he thinks so much like a taxpayer, and so does Pat and Natalie and all the people. Like, it's incredible, our town people, how they think. So like, you gotta respect that, and it's crazy. I love it. So, we don't have to prove that, do we?
I'll make a motion to approve 7.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for the kind words. It was really more than me. It was our collective team, engineering staff, and finance department, so it was everyone.
It was
Thank you.
great
Yeah.
work.
You lead it, but yes.
Okay, on to 8A, which is kind of the next step of several in the discussion for rural, commercial, and industrial discussion. Natalie, I think you're taking the lead on that?
Yes, I can just pull up the PowerPoint. So I do a brief presentation which just summarizes the staff report, so council, you can choose to waive that if you'd like.
Yeah, let's, trying to think, council, do you have any preference on public comment opportunity before presentation or after presentation on this one?
I'd love to hear the presentation first.
Okay.
And then public.
Let's do that, and then we'll have a public comment opportunity, and then we'll have discussion after that.
Move the next slide. Next slide. Sorry, or is it not
Sorry,
working?
it's recording. Just a second.
Oh, weird.
I don't know what's going on here. There we go.
Perfect, so tonight, the city council is asked to provide direction on moving forward with updates to the commercial industrial district zoning standards update. Per the work plan, tonight we're expecting specific directions on regarding changes to our rural commercial and transition rural commercial districts for a draft to be reviewed by the planning commission at our joint work session on May 23rd. Additionally, if ready, council could also provide direction on our self-storage uses, depending on the scope of the changes proposed tonight. I could potentially include any changes regarding that use in the draft ordinance amendment for the joint work session as well. Next slide. So for the staff report, there's several components that included feedback from the Planning Commission from 2 meetings, both in December of 2023, as well as our last meeting in April. And then it also summarized findings, and this is an attached report for the business community survey, which was completed in January 2024. And then additionally, the rest of the report is staff research and recommendation on options for proceeding with the development rights or minimum lot size in the commercial rural and transition commercial rural districts. And some options are also laid out for the storage uses and the brief discussion on task 3, since that one's the furthest out, and the planning commission requested more time to consider some items on that, as well as a question regarding additional community engagement. Next slide. So for task 1, which again is the CR and TCR update, the staff report outlines 6 options. Option 1 is to continue to apply development rights to these districts. Planning Commission and staff made the same recommendation for this option to remain. We believe it provides the most flexibility in terms of allowing for some smaller lot sizes down to 2.5 acres, while still balancing that out overall with some larger lots as well. And it will also provide consistency overall to the development in the rural area, rather than having a different program for the residential area. Option 2 would be to set a commercial density of 1 unit in 10, or it could be 1 unit in 5. This would still allow a minimum lot size of 2.5 acres, but a subdivision would have density calculated overall to be hitting these averages. The idea behind this is we wouldn't really be looking at any historical use of development rights. It would be looking at the overall acreage of a project. Option 3 would be to move to a minimum lot size of 10 acres. This would allow for a similar style of minimum lot size compared to what the development rights program was trying to obtain, was to have an average lot size of about 10 acres overall. So we could just move to a minimum lot size that's set at 10 acres. This is probably the least flexible of the approaches, or it is the least flexible of the approaches. I did confirm in researching some other cities that have commercial rural areas, and it is not unusual to have a minimum lot size of 10 acres. Because the reality is you're trying to plan for the additional services that are needed when you're not on municipal utilities, as well as protect your natural resources, and have larger lots are easier to accommodate. You either want really small lots or really large lots if infrastructure does come in later. And then option 4 would be kind of a half road approach, minimum lot size of 5 acres. Also something that other communities with rural commercial areas do. A minimum lot size of 2.5 acres was proposed as option 5. This would be a significant intensity increase for a commercial district in the rural area. And then option 6 as minimum lot size of 2.5 acres for permitted uses, but then identifying a minimum lot size for conditional uses such as contractors' operations that regularly require a larger lot size. For that use, particularly, staff would recommend around 10 acres. Next slide. For the self-storage uses, there are 4 options outlined for City Council. The option 1 is to remove as a conditional use in all applicable districts. So it's in our rural commercial and our light industrial districts. So just completely taking it out as a allowable use going forward. This was the Planning Commission recommendation overall. Option 2 is to remove as a conditional use in some districts. Maybe we're okay with that still happening in the rural commercial, maybe not so much in the light industrial, or vice versa. Option 3 is to consider additional standards to add in the review of the use. Examples include not locating these storage units on a main throughway through the city. So the idea being that the main throughway is more of a employment area.
Can I make a motion?
No, because I think we're doing public comment
hearing
opportunity after
stuff
this.
coming.
Fair enough.
But do you have a comment you want to make on it?
Can I make a motion before public comment?
I think you can, but I would advise that we don't.
Why would you advise we don't?
Because then we're not giving people the public comment opportunity that we said and published that we would give them.
Can we have public comment right now?
If you don't want to, so you don't want to see the rest of the
I'll
presentation?
make a motion on option 1.
Oh, you're talking on just self-storage.
We got a bunch of stuff we're gonna go
Yep.
through. I wanna make a motion that we accept option 1 for self-storage specifically. Do we have to go through all of
Okay,
it?
I don't even know if we need a motion for that. I think we could do that by consensus potentially
Yeah, tonight
within
it's
this.
just direction.
Yeah.
So we can certainly discuss further, but I can definitely note that that's that may be an opinion, but yeah, however you'd like to handle it. I
Okay.
don't need to continue with the presentation.
Well, let's just hold on for a second. So you're saying option 1 for task
Yeah,
2.
we don't need to go through the huge explanation of all the options.
Where's the rest of council on that?
I was gonna suggest that too, or only allowing indoor and not outdoor would be my fallback.
Okay.
Can I make a motion on that we accept number 1?
We don't need a motion, but we can direct Natalie if we're all on the same page that that's what we want to do for a task 2.
So we're accepting planning commission's recommendation.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
sort of we're polling for consensus to planning commission.
Dean, Alan, thoughts?
Option 1, with your conditional uses, are you saying one of the uses would not be indoor, no drive-up units?
So I'm saying that.
So existing storage facilities would remain as a legal non-conforming use, and they can remain in perpetuity until they cease operations.
Right.
But going forward, no new storage facilities would be approved.
Okay. No new at all?
Are you thinking maybe more along the lines of certain zones?
Well, there's definitely is a use, I can tell you, I'm actually using one in town right now with my move.
Right.
And I think as the city grows, you're gonna have a need in the future for more. So, unless the future council is willing to take it up, I'd be hard pressed to just remove it completely.
We may have a need, but they can store their stuff other places.
I'm okay with the planning commission recommendation. The one thing that I wanted to talk or ask about is past councils, mayors, whatever we want to say, and ourselves, we've approved a lot of small driveways, those kind of things. I was leaning more towards what Jeremy said, inside storage only. But the thing that I'm thinking about is RVs, all of those kinds of things. If it's one of those things we want to tell somebody, you live here, but you got to take your RV someplace else to store them because they can't sit in their driveway. Is that kind of something that we've done that caused that, or I shouldn't even worry or think about it?
I think the challenge is the balance between the different commercial and industrial uses that we have. We're very limited on the amount of that kind of zone in Corcoran. And if we continue to allow a lot more of this type of development, we won't get anything else. And so if we're looking for diversification, I feel like where we're at right now, it would be important to put a barrier in place against further use of scarce commercial property for storage. In the future, as we look at, the 2050 plan, maybe there's additional commercial at that time. There could be changes as we move the MUSA in the future, if we move the MUSA in the future, where we would want to change what's allowed. But I think for the next 5 to 10 years, it would make sense to try to focus on other kinds of commercial and industrial besides storage.
And this is just and correct me if I'm wrong, this is to get us to a draft that then will come back to at least planning commission for public hearing and then.
We're just recommending.
Yeah.
We're not voting on this.
Right.
True.
But if we recommend something and then they draw it up,
Right.
essentially we're saying, hey, you draw this up, we're gonna vote on it.
Right. Yep. It would certainly be the direction that we're leaning. I'm just saying it's not locked in stone yet if we.
That's kinda locked in soft stone.
Yeah. Amendable stone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd go down the same road then, planning commission recommendation.
Okay. Alan, are you okay with that?
You're not even gonna vote on it, are you?
I probably
This is
won't.
your last meeting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. But still, appreciate you.
I mean, and future council can change it, so, I mean, you four are the future council beyond today, so.
I think maybe that's the direction we'll head for now. I know it mentioned in the packet at one point if we weren't fully sure on a direction at this point, what would we need to do so? I would be interested if it's possible to get this data on number of facilities, storage facilities we have in town, rough estimate on the number of units we have in town, and now I mean to include built, under construction, or approved but not yet built, so what we will have. And then if we have any comparables that we can show, that kind of compare to, like does Medina have a similar amount? Does Rogers probably has more?
Mr. Mayor, what are we trying to do?
Just to see if we're way out of whack with
What?
how many storage facilities we have.
Yeah. So we could just say, this isn't the town where you store your stuff.
Yeah.
I don't care how many storage facilities Medina has, or Plymouth, or Rockford, or Buffalo, or whatever.
Fair enough. I think the majority of the council, either way, is leaning towards option one. If we're able to get some of that data as well, I think that would be helpful for me in my decision.
Would option one curtail, let's say, a farmer who's getting out of agriculture and wants to use their buildings for storage? Somebody
These are
wants
commercial.
As long as they're not renting out storage.
Commercial.
They shouldn't be renting out. A farmer who has agricultural structures, those structures are not meant to be used as
Right, if he,
yeah.
I mean, if he
But if they want
retires from farming, he has the structures, he's not just gonna leave them vacant, right?
Correct, but if they're approved as agricultural structures, they should not be used for anything other than agriculture. And typically with, a lot of our CUPs where someone has a larger than by right footprint, they have a clause in there that they can't be using it as a commercial use, such as renting it out to others. So I would say that that's already something that we don't allow in the rural residential area. So this is specifically how we're currently addressing how we currently handle it in the commercial and industrial districts, not rural residential. And Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, so while I try to obtain this data, would it be sufficient to just look at Medina and Rogers to do a comparison, or is there any other cities you wanted me to take a look at?
Greenfield, if you could as well, just
Okay.
get kind of all sides. And I'll do some digging in other cities as well and see if anything of note pops up. But I think general consensus of council is to lean towards that first option
Okay.
in the draft. So now do we want to move on to task 3?
Yep, task 3, so I would just refer to the planning commission feedback in the staff report to date. At the last meeting, we were on a bit of a time crunch and the use table became very overwhelming, so we decided we're going to break it up into chunks and we'll do one page of the use table at a time to kind of review where there might be areas to simplify, or where there might be some inconsistencies in why do we allow it in this district but not another. And so we're going to take a few meetings to do that, since this is the task that has the most time allowed. And then, but it would be helpful if there is any feedback at this time. If you would like me to bring back to the planning commission meeting in May, please feel free to share that. Otherwise, if we have additional time at the joint work session in May, there can also be discussion at that point as well. Next slide. And then the other point of clarity staff has is regarding additional community outreach. The business community survey determined a number of participants were interested in additional opportunities. The examples of options provided in the survey included an open house with council and staff to discuss the updates, a one-time panel discussion with council, or a temporary task force that would meet more than once, at least twice. And then, so if the council is interested in adding one or more of these options, I would need clarity on what exactly which option you would prefer, or if you want to do multiple options. This will likely add time to our anticipated timeline, so it will be
For task
important.
3.
Huh?
For task 3.
For task 3, as long as, if there's additional feedback you want regarding task 1 or task 2, then just keep that in mind. But if we're making it specific to as an engagement for task 3, then I'm less concerned about the impact of the timeline. And we have time still for task 1 and task 2, but I know task 1 we've been really trying to keep to a strict timeline.
What on the agenda is this?
What do you mean?
What part of the agenda is this?
8A.
Okay.
And then next slide.
We've asked for, we've asked for engagement from the community for like all 8 years I've been on the council. So, community engagement commercially is really strong at the beginning and then goes away. And so, I'm totally okay with all the community engagement. And, we go neck deep in that, and then it stops. So whatever happens, we need to, if community engagement is something we want to do it. But I've been down this road 6 times now, and if they're not committed, then that's fine. We need to stop community engagement and just proceed.
So that would seem to lend itself toward that second bullet, maybe a one-time panel discussion to get
Yeah.
that engagement
I
one
wanna-
time instead
yeah.
of ongoing activity.
We can't go neck deep in this because we tried it 6 times and it has not succeeded.
And we could potentially, if
There's
that,
nothing wrong with the
Blew our-
concept.
yeah, if that blew our expectations away and people said they wanted to continue, we could always add from there. If
Yeah,
Or we could encourage
Defied.
them to apply for planning commission vacancies.
all that.
If they're a resident.
they're
Now,
residents.
there's only one business
That's
owner
true.
in the survey that was also a resident.
Whatever the case may be, we have a dead EDA with no people and nobody's scratching to get there.
We're technically on the EDA.
I know.
Yeah, the EDA and the council are the same people.
I get it. Yeah. So, like, everyone in the town complains about like how unfriendly we are to business, and then we have an open business forum, and people are excited to show up, and then after 6 months they don't show up anymore. And so, I just think if we have this momentum of people who are gonna show up, let's do it. And then if people don't, then we're done.
Or just do it in a forum where you're pulling the ideas out of them quickly,
Something.
because they might not want to continue to
Yeah.
push it.
Well, not all comments might come from business owners though too, it may come from residents that are affected by proximity
That's
to
a good
commercial
point.
industrial, because that's where we had a lot of the contentions in these meetings, there are developments going in next to residential areas, and then
That's a good point. I think staff report touched on that.
Yes, that's the next slide. So I just want to clarify, so when we originally adopted the work plan, one of the questions was, do we want to do some community engagement component with the business community? That's how we kind of defined it. And at that time, we decided to do the survey. That was going to be the option. And as far as having one of these other options, that was going to, we decided to handle it as a survey question to see if there was interest. So this is just reporting back that there was some interest for all of these. Technically, we've already done the community engagement that you committed to. So this is just a question of, are you interested in adding more? So as a council, you can decide that we don't need to do any of these, we could do one. I'm just looking for direction as to how we want to possibly incorporate more. And then additionally, last planning commission meeting, next slide, there was a desire expressed by the planning commission for additional community input from residents on the proposed updates, including the changes, possible changes to development rights application in the commercial rural. And so if this was also something the council was interested in trying to get a gauge on, the staff question is, should a survey be sent out to the larger community or maybe a more localized survey to rural residential residents within so many feet of the Birchville district? And this would add time to the anticipated timeline for task one. But again,
I would be strongly in favor of, if we're gonna consider any changes to that degree, I think we need to have significant public input. I think the survey to rural residential residents makes sense. Whether we do that to all rural residential or we limit it to certain, like Natalie was saying, within certain number of feet within CR or TCR zoned or guided properties. I'd be open to either, but I think it's such a big item that without doing any sort of change without resident feedback on that, I'd be hesitant.
So does that mean any option besides option 1 should be preceded by resident feedback? Is that what you mean? Because option 1, I think, is the further clarification of the existing policy.
So I would say I would be in support of adding a larger survey to rural residential residents for item 1. For task 3, I'd be in favor of, like John was kind of talking about, maybe doing John and you, the single event with businesses as opposed to some of the longer commitments. And then I think we've kind of given direction on where we are for task 2 for now.
So one clarification, Mayor. As Natalie pointed out, this will change the timeline. And so in terms of expectations, because staff has been working very hard to deliver on a condensed timeline, what would be an expectation for the increased timeline?
So, so if I start working on this now, we could potentially have a survey available and some kind of, I would need to understand exactly the scope. Are we doing it to all of the rural residential? Because that'll take several days to get mailers out, and that's going to increase costs. I have no problem doing that. It's all your decision, so I'm not trying to make it sound exaggerated, but I want to make sure you understand the implications of it.
The only reason I'm thinking that we should do that is if we limit it to a certain number of feet from commercial or CR or TCR, and one of the concerns that's been brought up before is that we could see rezonings kind of cascade.
Yep.
Then it could be people that are affected that probably should have gotten the input from that right now they wouldn't qualify as that.
A middle of the road approach. I think that's valid, and I do think it makes sense to survey anyone who has development rights, essentially. So a middle of the road approach would be to maybe mail a mailer to the people within a radius of Birchville.
Okay.
And then, but make it open to anyone make it pretty much open to anyone. So any resident in the city could potentially.
So we could like share the link.
Yeah, and we can ask them, like I did with the business community survey, where I asked them to kind of confirm where their address is, so we can kind of get an idea
Yep.
of how valuable the feedback was.
Yeah.
We can ask them what part of the state they live in, so we can
Perfect.
kind of separate the data from people who live in rural residential versus within the MUSA. So
That
we
would
could
work for me.
we could publish it, make it available in terms of communication, and trying to put the word out there. But as far as the mailed invitation, it would go to the radius.
I think that's a good middle.
Now, would we want a 500-foot radius or a 1,000-foot radius?
Big parcels, I would do 1,000.
I mean, is the Birchville area the only area that this really comes into play?
At this time, yes, the zoning map has the commercial, rural, and TCR
Yeah.
districts. It's consolidated off the 1930 area. Yep, and a little further south than that, 1930 is where the TCR is. So it's kind of an area where we identified as potentially transitioning to commercial, rural. So that is the main area at this time where the development rights apply to commercial. The other commercial areas and industrial areas we have are within the MUSA.
Yeah.
So,
I guess if I was to give you an opinion, my opinion would be just to limit it in scope in that area.
Okay.
And not expand it to the whole city, because it's really this council's discretion to rezone other areas in the city, so you can apply what you learn there before you even consider rezoning.
True. How do you feel about the middle ground that Natalie said of making it for them, picking out 500 or 1,000 square foot radius, and then
You can
having
almost
it
put
be
it
open?
online and take
Yeah.
open comment, anyone can come in and get comment.
Yeah.
But to go on a whole big survey, it seems like a lot.
I don't think we'd
of-
be sending it out to people outside of that radius,
Yeah, okay.
right? That's what
correct,
you're
so
saying.
a mailed notice would go within a radius. Everything else would just be through our communications, I think our website essentially is what I'm thinking at this point. Maybe we can talk about a communication plan, but it would be.
I'd say let's do 500 feet and get it online, and people can get word out, and council can help spread it amongst neighbors, and, you know, that way people 600 feet can hear from people 500 feet, and so.
So then this could potentially push it back by about 2 months, because we want to give at least a couple weeks, I think, where it's available.
Okay.
And I think it's going to probably take a couple weeks as well to get it, to have the questions developed and have it mailed out. So I think we're looking at potentially 2 months before I have feedback that I can summarize for you.
Okay. Thoughts on that?
It's a large time frame.
Yeah.
I think, I can't promise that this would be done by May 23rd.
Understand.
I feel like maybe we should, if you're done with your presentation,
Yeah.
you take public comment,
Yep.
and then review that as part of the discussion after public comment.
Okay, let's do that. If anyone would like to come up for public comment, feel free to do so. Yeah, come on up. Just state your name and address for the record, and the floor is yours. I think the mic is on.
Sorry if you need that.
Perfect.
David Foy, I live across the street at 8115, County 116. And there's 3 areas I'll briefly try to talk about. I did come to Planning Commission 3 weeks ago. I did not know there was no public comment there, and I apologize. I was loud in saying I was frustrated there wasn't any public comment. But I did read the report about that, and I found how important it is for some people to have a restaurant with a hatchery next door, on and on and on, but ignore all the business that I've in my relationship to the city, and it's frustrating.
Mr. Mayor, may I? I'd rather not
Okay.
rehash that and waste your time,
I'm
okay?
telling you, I read the report.
I'd rather
So let's go on
hear
with this
your
one.
opinion instead of taking shots at our planning commission,
I have no
please.
idea who wrote that, but I'm gonna tell you that, I've got some facts, and they're from, this is right off of a commercial website. Any commercial really could have this, right? So I gave a prior report of this. I think I gave a copy to you, Dean, and one to Tom. So there are 92 commercial properties within 10 miles of what we just talked about, Condo 30 and Condo 19, which is, I believe, the core of one of the rural sites. 92 properties. Of those properties, and I got the facts, 28% are in the mid 3 acres or less. That's a strong percentage. If you said, well, what about the ones that are, say, 4 to 6 acres, that's 11 more, or about another 11%. If you said, how about 6 to 10 acres? Okay, 6 to 10 acres is about 9.7, 10%. Basically, half of all the properties for sale or sold recently within 10 miles, which includes obviously other cities, of that intersection are in fact 10 acres or less. Certainly there are some that are 10 acres or more to be subdivided into smaller portions. Think of commercial real estate as a lot like people in this room. I don't know how many people here are in their first home. I'm in my 7th, but I'm a real estate broker, so that would make sense. But most people in here are not in their first home. It's the same thing with businesses as they incubate. Probably in their garage, in their basement, somewhere they have an idea. They eventually rent space somewhere. They want to grow and own their space just like you want to own your home. And by making a 10-acre minimum, you make it not affordable at 100 grand an acre right now. If it's $1 million just for the dirt, you have to have one application for one improvement, it's not affordable. And you're making plans for businesses that are in fact, if they're incubation, the kind we want, they create jobs, they may not be able to afford it, most can't. I want to go back to, we've done surveys with people that are already here, and only one of them actually lives in this town. I read the report. I read about other things in the report, are they satisfied with different services here? So if I don't get to talk about, Perdine, what that report said, I'm okay with that. But the report itself is from people that are already doing business here. A survey of, if you really want to know the truth, and you really want to know what the industry and the market's doing, invite brokers, developers, business owners, some that are here, some that aren't, homeowners that are landowners that are here within 500 feet, there are some farmers that own land that are 1,200 feet away that have a stake in the game. So that's about the commercial side. I also want to talk about building rates. I believe, and I was understanding that building rates were something that probably wouldn't be on the table this year. There's a lot of things going on, and yet I read the notes and read this and that.
Motion to extend.
How building rates are affected
All those in
by.
favor
Hold
say
on,
aye.
Dave.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Go ahead.
Please
Just
continue.
extending your
So
time.
that was just procedural for the
Thank you.
5-minute time.
Thanks, John, I didn't know. I could talk faster. Maybe not. So this report, I can have copies made, but what's interesting is half of all these properties are 10 acres or less, a significant share. And that ought to bode well for who would we want to move in here, to create jobs, create a local business. And I want to address the storage thing a second, because that's the next thing. And that is, we're creating a huge amount of non-acreage housing in this city. I like it, brother, I'm not against it. 640 some dwelling units up at the whole church area, thousands of potential people living in sewer and water, quarter-acre or less lots. And for us to say they should store whatever they have that they don't, because there are a lot of them are townhouses, villa homes, apartments, they should put their things somewhere else. I don't own storage, I don't have any storage, I don't own a storage facility, I have no axe to grind. I'm talking about looking forward to the thousands of people that are going to live here that aren't going to be able to store their things nearby. I will, I know we're out of time here, I wanted to talk about the issue of maybe a combination of building rates and commercial. I think it's absolutely unfair to tell people that are large landowners, particularly farmers, that they cannot develop their land in a proper way because there's no sewer and water in my lifetime, and possibly the lifetime of most of the people in this room. But they want to farm. And they have building rights. And what are those building rights worth? I personally bought 2 building rights in the early 90s from Kevin Castle. I paid about $18,000 each for 2 building rights, because at that time we allowed us to buy one from adjacent property. Today, that's not even allowed. Nobody in this room could sell their neighbor a building right. It's not allowed. It was allowed then. So what value do these people have that these building rights are rotting there, they're not using them? In the meantime, we claim we want open space. If you let them sell their building rights and they sell their ability to develop, you will have open space and cost the city nothing. And it will enhance the city because instead of having 10-acre home sites that people can't take care of doing the equipment, you'll have a lot higher density with acreage lots on acreage properties outside of the municipal line, and it's more orderly and it creates long-term open spaces. I have a lot of other reasons. I think I'm out of time on that, but I thought there was going to be maybe something coming in the fall this winter where this would be discussed. I didn't realize it was on the agenda now, or I would have come earlier. Thank you.
And I think, like previous discussions we've had, a bigger conversation on that can be had at that time, just not right now with all we have going on. This is kind of a somewhat related issue to building rights, but that broader conversation that you wanted to have on building rights, we can at some point get that on an agenda.
Last thing, I was asked tonight to say something about a taxpayer that's lived here for her husband and generations. And she said I could use her name, Rachel Testman. She said, if you guys know Rachel, it's a very detailed, long conversation. Her point was that you cannot leave the history of this city behind and take pieces like we like to look at land, we like to look at old 100-year-old schools. What about people that are 3rd and 4th generation farms that can't afford to farm anymore, and yet you're not going to see cities through water for a long time, or maybe somebody rents the land and they want to live on that and sell their building rights. She has a point, and for somebody to own that much land and live check to check is a problem, and she'll tell you that. She would have been here tonight had she known the issue might come up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
David.
David. Mr. Mayor, I wanted to ask Natalie a question. I think I remember examples of projects where building rights were being sold from one neighbor to another immediate neighbor.
Correct, so
Is
if we
that-
can plat it, so the issue with, my understanding is when development rights were being sold, basically from the northwest rural residential to someone who's nowhere nearby, the city wasn't involved in those transactions, and so we had no way to track it. And so it ended up with a lot of confusion, and made it very cumbersome to be able to figure out, okay, well, who sold development rights and to who? And so as we've tried to perfect the program and to make it workable and trackable, the requirement now is we can look at that as part of a plat. And so you have to have an adjacent property line, a shared property line, so that we can plat the properties together. And then, once we do that, you can pool the development rights and then reassign them. And so there's still a private sale that happens in that instance, because the city isn't a part of the sale. But as far as tracking it and then having it part of the official record, we handle that through the plat.
Okay.
So there's very limited applications, but it is something that's possible for people who are adjacent to someone with additional development rights.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
That's not how.
Go out to the
Public
microphone.
comment. Come on up.
You guys gotta talk and follow our rules, please.
Craig Sherwood, that isn't the way, she described it wrong, because if you want to plot both properties, yeah, now you go through the planning process, but just to transfer building rights, the city is not gonna let you do that. Maybe when you plot both pieces, yeah, and end up with a remnant, but who wants to do that? Farmer isn't gonna want to plat their land, they don't, but they'll well sell development rights.
If memory serves me right, we had a development on the west side of 19 where it was two parcels. They were platted simultaneously and replatted, and the one parcel's property didn't change. The development rights moved to the other parcel, who then subdivided.
You're talking about the Sudi subdivision, and you're correct. So it was he had a farmer to the east of him who had 12 development rights, and he was looking to subdivide his property into two when he only had one development right. Or, I'm sorry, he had one house existing, so he needed an additional development right to be able to subdivide. And so we were able to plat the farm together with his platted lot already, and there was it's the same thing. So basically, we reassigned it. So now the farm has 11 development rights, and then the Zudi subdivision was able to take place. So it is something that's
It seems to me it happened down in the southwestern part of the city too, with that one development that came in. There were supposed to be 10-acre lots, and I can't remember who the developer was that thought.
bought an outlot that had no development rights. Is that the one we're talking about? And then
Well,
There's
he
a
bought a
couple
lot
that
with
came in
one
and did that.
development right, and his family had 40 acres to the east.
Yeah.
And had several,
Mhm.
and he merged and split,
Mhm.
didn't change the size of the property, and moved 3 more development rights over.
correct. Yep.
So it happens.
Yes, it does happen.
We've had several cases of it happening.
There's a very specific reason why, to understand or to advocate for change, you have to understand why the policy is there in the first place. If you don't understand why the policy is there in the first place, you can't be an advocate for change. And so people are always advocates for change in our policies in Corcoran. And the whole original rights for development was based on that we don't want to have overdevelopment in Corcoran. So if you look at
Particularly
why they're
outside of
there,
Mesa.
in the whole first place, is that we don't want overdevelopment in Corcoran. That's where we start. Why are we there? So people come to me all the time with why we shouldn't be able to sell them. I got a lot of development rights. Why shouldn't I be able to sell them? Well, the reason why they're there in the first place is to limit development rights. That's why we did it in the first place. So you might as well not even have them if you don't want to subscribe to the whole purpose in the beginning of limiting development rights. We are a unique suburb in Minnesota. I don't know of another one. I think there's one that has development rights per acre. We've had them forever. In 1980 or whatever, these are why they were in the first place. So to come in now and say, hey, this is garbage, we should be able to sell them or jump them or whatever, You have to look at why they were there in the first place.
I think the
Why is
context
Corcoran the way it is? Why are we less developed than other cities? The whole reason is we have these development rights. 99% of the people appreciate them. It
Well,
is
and that's
true,
why-
or
and I wanna
we've,
prevent that
we're
back and
30
forth.
years into it. If it wasn't true, people would have lost elections and changed it.
And I
You can't
wanna-
come in here 40 years after it started and say that most people are against it. Otherwise, 40 years of elections would have decided it. So if you wanted to change it, you should have changed it in 1985, 95, 2005, 2015. We're 40 years into it. So to come here now and say that that policy is garbage and it shouldn't have been the case and whatever you want to say, you had 40 years to disprove it. Okay?
Respond? Can I respond?
No, this is my time.
Can't respond then, okay.
No, you can't. Win an election and change the policy. That's how it goes. You've had 40 years to win an election here on building rights. Okay? You have. Right?
I don't need a lecture, John. If I can't talk, why would I listen?
Well, that's how it goes here. David, you talked. Okay? You talked. That's how it goes. If you don't want it, support someone else for the election. These building rights have been around forever. And it's why you drive past 30 after Mama G's, there are no lights. Because of building rights. And you can't get rid of them. If you don't like it, you bought them, then you got to change it. We're not changing building rights in this town unless you got 4 guys here who agree with you. And I'm fine with it. If you win 4 elections or 3, that's fine. Enough of the building rights conversation. It's been going on since the 80s. And I'm fine with if you want to win elections and take them away. I have calls every week on these building rights. I love our town. Part of why our town is unique is we're rural and we have building rights and it's unique and you don't like them, people don't like them. If they didn't like them so much, we wouldn't have them for 40 years.
And I understand. I thank you for not responding. I appreciate not having the back and forth. I definitely.
David's like one of the best guys in this whole community.
Absolutely. And David, I'm happy to chat separate from the meeting, and you know how to reach me.
When, would it be on the ballot in November? Yes or no kind of thing?
Like a
referendum, we're past the referendum.
Oh, I don't think it technically could this year.
But under the charter, next year, you could mount a petition, you could put it on the ballot.
Or vote in November?
Yeah, there'd potentially be a route for a referendum in the future election that we could chat about.
Number of signatures on a petition.
Yeah. It's a process. It's a defined process.
Can I make a comment?
It's easy to change it.
John, nobody's asking for more density. We're asking for fairness for the farmers. That's all. That's
I'm a
all.
farmer, I have a ton of rights, I can't sell them, and I accept that.
Yeah, but don't talk density, because that doesn't work, because you're just transferring density. You're not adding density.
I'm aware of all of it. We've had, how many meetings have I had about density and farming and rights and all of it? We're a different town with different set of rules. It makes our town good. Sometimes it sucks. If you want to change it, you gotta win elections and change it that way. And we've had 40 years of councils that have been against some of the things you're asking for. And I'm on the losing end of it too. I can't sell my building rights.
I have farmers that I go talk to and I don't want to sell my building rights, and they're 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation farmers. They don't want to sell them. I haven't had anybody other than the name used this evening of somebody that needs to sell them. No one, I don't know anybody that has come here that has asked about it.
And I think it's probably
Other
fair
than
to
you
say
guys.
there's not a blanket, different people are gonna have different opinions, and,
It's a big deal.
yeah. And that's why I would continue to advocate if we were to make any changes in that regard, that we have some pretty robust public feedback process, because I just think it's too big of an issue to change anything without that,
Yep.
so.
So on this item, Mayor and Council, Natalie, do you need any more feedback on the three options that I discussed?
Okay. So I think we need to back up. So as far, for task one, what is council's direction and how we'd like to proceed in terms of the draft to prepare for the joint work session on the 23rd? What changes are we looking to make?
Outside of the, not talking survey aspect of task one, you're talking.
Correct. Well, and I think this would help determine the survey aspect. So
Okay.
I think to Councilor Nichols' point, option one is not suggesting any changes at this time. It would just be providing language in the code that affirms our past practices. It would be the other options that would probably lead to that community survey for how changes to how development rates are handled specifically in the commercial rural districts.
Yeah, I think the direction was, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, option one for where we're headed initially on the draft, but on a survey, we'd probably want that in comparison to, would you prefer a system instead of the building rights that would be one of those?
You mean, for building rights in a commercial area?
Yes, in those zones.
Are there any of those options that you don't want on the survey?
I think 6 would be an option to add on the survey.
I don't know if people are gonna understand the question. It seems like it might be a little complicated for a written survey to make sure people comprehend what the implications of the different choices would be.
Well, maybe we have to wordsmith it a bit, or,
Or make
Right,
it graphical.
yeah.
You probably have to make it graphical to show how it would change, right? From a building rights thing, that's 5 parcels or 10 parcels on 40 acres or whatever it is to 2.5 lots potentially be, you know,
I hesitate
15.
to sign my wife up for this, but she's pretty good with creating some of those graphics. We could give it a shot and see if it's something that we could include on the survey, if that works. I mean, do you think is there a way to include a graphic?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. So to clarify, I apologize, for the joint work session, the draft you'd like me to prepare is for option one, but as far as the 2-month process for for the survey that we plan to proceed with, it would be getting feedback on all of the options. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, unless council feels like there's one in particular or two that we want to eliminate, just for simplification, if we don't want to include.
I like the fact what Councilmember Schultz said, number 6, and let's stage it. Number 6 and number 4 is 2.5. Here's an example of 2.5 acre per lot. Here's an example of 5 acre lots. And then currently we're at a minimum size of 10 acres. Eliminate, obviously, option 5, which is almost the same as 6. I'd like to know what the neighbors would think.
I would say 5 is very different than 6, because 5
Okay.
is going to be 4 times the density, potentially, than what we currently allow overall in this area, in terms of commercial properties. So 6 would be based on the use, so we're saying, okay, there's this area of 2.5 acre lots, then we know right off the gate, this listed uses can't go there. So, because these are 2.5 acre parcels, so this would prevent, so basically, this would prevent a use from going into lots that are 2.5 acres. So it would be a way to kind of say contractors' operations need to be on a 10 acre lot. I don't know exactly how I'd show that
Okay.
graphically, or with a
I think we
graphic, but
can
we
work
can.
through that.
It'd
But that
probably
would
be
be-
easier just to go with 5 then instead of 6,
Yeah,
because you're putting a lot of onus on the city to decide what a business owner can do on 2.5 acres versus 5 acres, right?
I mean, I think we'll get a general idea of what people are leaning towards if we just include options 1 through 5.
Yeah, that's, go ahead with that
I
too.
mean, with option 1, the smallest commercial lot was 1 acre?
no, option 1, the smallest commercial lot is still 2.5 acres. You're
Okay.
just balancing it out, so if you have a 40-acre parcel, you can have a 2.5 acre lot, but then the other 3 lots are gonna be larger to balance it out. So it's basically 1 in 10, or however many development rights are assigned.
Right, okay. So regardless of 1, 2, or 5, all of them would give smaller businesses the same opportunity at a relatively small 2.5 acre lot as their first step.
Correct, we do allow for 2.5 acre lots now under our current system. It's balanced out in terms of
With
subdividing.
the development
Yeah.
rights, yeah. I think we can come up with a way, I'll do most of the work, so.
Please.
On the graphic side of it.
Okay.
So I don't want you to stress out about that. I know you've got a ton on your plate. So I think maybe with a phone call or 2, I can get you some usable graphics and then we can come up with a survey.
Okay, so survey will be, we'll have, ask for feedback on options 1 through 5, but still the joint, I don't think I've gotten consensus on what draft is going to the joint work session.
I would, for now, draft it as 1, I think is what the consensus has been. We
Okay.
need significant feedback to refute what we currently have to make any changes.
And then, so while I completely understand that option 6 might be very confusing for survey purposes, are we saying that option 6 is just not something we're interested in pursuing at all? Should I just remove it off the table? Or that's just something that we're not including in the survey?
I'd say for now, not including in the survey.
Okay.
We can potentially dig into it more if there's interest in option 4 and 5 or whatever, we can dig into that further. Or really interest in options other than 1.
Okay, so I have what I need for task 1. Task 2 is to provide a draft that removes self-storage from the applicable districts going forward at this time. And then task 3, was there any additional feedback the council had, or do we just want to try to earmark time at the joint work session to go over the planning commission feedback received so far?
Anything specific? Or do we just want to work it on the work session?
I think it'll work better in the work session.
Okay. And then,
We have a full planning commission, right? We just had
Currently.
3 there that night.
we had
Currently,
three
we
that
might
night.
not.
Yep, currently we have 5 members, I would say at this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, as far as additional community engagement for task 3, we set a single event with businesses. I didn't quite understand if we were saying we wanted to do the open house with businesses, or if we wanted to do a panel with business owners.
I think John said the panel was more preferable, but do you have any?
Well, if you get in, we need to get input. It's really hard. It's been
Yeah.
7 years of trying to get input, and there's really good interaction at the beginning, and then it goes away.
Right. So both of those are one-time events. I think I'd be open to either, so maybe,
Staff come back with
Staff
something
come back
more
with-
detailed. Okay.
you know, if the majority say they want to do an open house over a one-time session, we'll do an open house. If they want to do a panel instead of open
I
house,
think the majority was for an open house. I think there was just enough people that said they were interested for the panel that we might actually have a
okay,
panel.
then let's I think lean towards the open house.
The open house would probably tend more public input too, I'd imagine,
Yeah,
from residents.
And maybe we should reach out to
Hope Community Church.
Hope and
Okay.
Mr. Lothar, see if we could use this space for that.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on that item? That you need, Natalie?
I think that's all I need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Was there anybody, I'm sorry, were we done with public comment? We had two people talk, or did we
I
have
thought
anybody
we were,
else?
but if anyone else wanted to speak, I think we're good. Thanks for checking us. One moment to find page, thank you, I got it. On to unfinished business, 9A was tabled, so 9B, is the request approval of updated organization chart.
Okay, Mayor and Council, what you have before you is the organization chart that we validated in February.
May I ask a question? Why did we pull 9A?
There was kind of a multitude of reasons, one of which being I kind of wanted today's meeting to be about Alan's last meeting, and with our agenda coming up, we don't particularly have a need for a full council on the 9th. We do on the 23rd.
What was the vote on pulling back 9A?
4-0.
4-0.
For the record.
That was part of consent, wasn't it?
It was.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, it was part of agenda.
Part of the
setting.
agenda.
Approval.
I wasn't here. Okay, fair enough.
Sorry about that.
That's fine. I wasn't here. It's my penalty.
But it will be coming up for sure, and it has to happen at the 9th,
Fair
given
enough.
because the 23rd is going to be a hefty agenda.
It's not my deal.
You wouldn't have a printed copy of this, did you?
You should have one in your packet. It's item 9B. It's a pretty, should have been right on the top. It's actually revised 9B. It's this big.
Okay, thank you.
So Mayor and Council, this is the organization chart. As I said, as we identified spaces and faces that existed in February, since that time, I've been here now just shy of 5 months, had an opportunity to look at what we need operationally, talk with staff about what we need, speak with you. In that time, we've also had 3 different significant assessments. One was a cultural assessment, the other one was a human resources assessment, as well as a financial assessment, which is we still have some phases of that in terms of our processes. So the recommendations here are based upon all of those feedbacks and with a long-term outlook. It's also important to note that as of right now, there's no expectation that this should be, for the most part, a net zero. In the near term, there's a potential increase which are kind of identified. So first and foremost, under Public Works, it's important to note we have 4 black boxes. What that means is Public Works needs action figures. The black boxes are the engineering development superintendent, which we initially went out for at the beginning of the year. We did not find any appropriate applicants, and we'll be going out for that again soon. Next, those other 2 black boxes fall under the utility. While it would be desirable to have them filled right now, we have a little bit of time because we don't have that water system running completely yet. But the sooner that we can get them, it's advantageous. And then down there, the maintenance worker, we did have some good applicants when we recently did this, and we'd asked at that point, if you recall, if we could hire 2, because we knew Clyde was retiring. We had a vacancy and Clyde was retiring. Unfortunately, through negotiations, we secured only one of those, and he started on Monday. It's going to be a great fit. But in looking at what we need for our requirements, we've decided to delay when the market will look better at the end of the summer, going into fall, and we're going to be able to meet our needs in the near term with part-time employees. What you see on there is those black boxes are proposed changes One, the Public Works Director also has consistently operated as our engineer. Now, we contract for engineer services. He's a professional engineer. He has the certifications as an engineer. If you've ever sat in the DRC meetings, they look to him to serve as our city engineer. And so one of my proposals is that we correct that and we change the title to include the scope of responsibilities for engineer. I think it's appropriate because that's the way that we function. The other change is under the administrative assistants for Public Works. In speaking with her and talking with the Public Works Director, as we grow that utility, having the function of utility billing operate within that group rather than in another group creates an efficiency that helps us be more effective. And so I propose that that administrative assistant take on the role of utility billing. And we believe that she has the capacity and the responsibilities in order to do that. So before I switch, any questions about Public Works or comments? Okay. Next, I believe the city's overdue in having a community development department. We operate this way, but we need to get some efficiency and effectiveness with this. Our planner has been operating at the Senior Plus Planner role, doing a lot of community development director roles for quite a while. And one of the proposals you see on the left is the black boxes would be to move construction services supervisor and the permit technician and building inspections under community development. There's a couple reasons for this. This gives us people who are boots on the ground, feedback to the planners on what's happening out there. So that gives us efficiencies. It also helps that in most cities permitting happens under community development.
Is that Natalie?
Yes.
Okay.
And one of the things you see there, the number 2 thing is I propose that we hire a community development director position in Q2, end of Q2. And until then, I propose that we appoint the planner to the position as interim community development director. The last 2 changes under there you see in the black boxes, and I've discussed this with the employee, having the recreation supervisor title and scope of responsibility changed to become community engagement supervisor. Now, still retaining the parks and planning and the recreation roles, but also expanding the scope. We don't have a volunteer management program. We have the opportunity, we have volunteers that are helping us with things. We're not really tracking it, we're missing it, and as a result, we're not retaining volunteers. We waste a lot of time recruiting people. If we develop a volunteer program and we have some communities that are growing here with a lot of great skills that we can tap into that can help us do things. And it's a missed opportunity. So we want to grow our volunteer capacity. That's one way. Another one, it's just capturing the realities that that employee is already doing a lead role in most of our community-wide events. She becomes the face of the city with a lot of our partners. And so this is just acknowledging a reality that exists. And then finally, she has been providing oversight to the park planning contract, but this just makes that formal, that as we continue with our park planning initiatives, the community engagement supervisor would be responsible for that. So any feedback or questions or comments on this?
Anything for Dick?
Okay, and then the final one today, there's no proposed changes for the police department at this time. The final one falls under administration. As you know, we don't have an administrative services director. My proposal is that we actually would benefit more from an assistant city administrator. And this role would look different in this regard. It's not just a matter of semantics, it's a matter of operations. All the roles on the left side here become, they address concerns that were identified during the cultural assessment in terms of how we provide internal customer service. And so the roles that you see there, while they have external customer service responsibilities, they have significant internal customer service responsibilities. And so probably the biggest, hardest move straight out is suggesting that finance manager report directly to me. And part of the reason for that is the scope of responsibility that the finance manager has and working with all the other department heads. And candidly, I have a background in it. And so
Mr. Mayor, man. Hey, guys, sidebars, if you
travels
could go
a
out
lot.
there, please.
Appreciate it.
We're talking business. Thank you.
So with that, and changing the utility billing to fall under the utilities section, we believe that the accounting clerk position is no longer necessary. And that role, we would take that position then and relocate it to become a human resources generalist that we do need. We need someone that is identifying benefits, questions, resolving onboarding issues, that's doing this full time. We have had several people that have been doing this as part-time jobs, and the consequence of that, we heard during the cultural assessment, is that employees aren't feeling like they're getting the attention that they need and certainly that they deserve to quickly resolve some of their HR-related issues. So having a full-time HR generalist will help us take care of our people better.
Would this be a transfer?
It would not.
Oh, it'd be a new hire?
It would be a
A
new
replacement? Okay. And then so, is the county clerk job eliminated or are they reassigned?
It is eliminated.
Okay.
And that's the next topic of conversation after we've gone through this, is to talk about how to deal with that. So an IT manager would oversee the IT contract, all IT contracts. I say IT contract. Currently we have CIT, but we're also going to have SCADA systems. We have other IT systems in which we're working with contractors all the time. Having a onboard person who's working that for us rather than someone who's here on Wednesdays, and then you never know who you're going to get when you call the help desk, is really critical for us to, especially in this environment, with cybersecurity challenges, concerns, and then the demands of the technology that we have to maintain. We need somebody on the ground full-time.
Will they be in charge of hardware acquisition and troubleshooting?
Correct. And then the communications assistant is projected to come full-time in the fourth quarter. And this currently falls under the city clerk. And part of the reason for moving it under the assistant city administrator is we're expanding, the scope of responsibilities, and to be able to give that, the city clerk position is a very hard position, especially in an election year like this. And so to have that communications person reporting to someone that is able to focus on their communications roles. Michelle's doing a fantastic job, and right now it's a part-time position. As it becomes a full-time position, managing those responsibilities becomes even more difficult.
Election years are tough for you.
Yeah.
It's a lot that you have to do, and you do a great job of it.
And they get harder every time.
The last thing that I'll point out is there's a black box under the administrative assistant. As we're a growing city, it would be very helpful, but also an important step for us to have a deputy clerk working for the city clerk. There's a couple reasons for that. One, during the election year, having someone who can provide that oversight of the precincts. Our assistant, our administrative assistant already operates like a deputy clerk often. And so in some ways it's acknowledging the reality of their responsibilities. But it also then opens up the scope to ensure that that person gets the training that they needed, the certifications required in order for us to provide the professional services that the community demands. Any questions about this?
There's enough work in an off-election year for the deputy clerk?
The deputy clerk doesn't just focus on election things.
Right.
She handles the front desk responses. She and the public works administrative assistant are the first point of contact. They're the face of the city. to a lot of people that come in, and responding to a lot of needs. So the deputy clerk title allows us to equip her to help with things that, like right now she's already doing some of it, but there's more training, there's some certifications that would provide better confidence in her ability to do some of those things. Any questions about this? So with the accounting clerk position, I've talked with several people about this, trying to make the best. How do we handle this in a way that's appropriate? My request of you is that I would like to offer a severance to this employee. And so the city does not owe them a severance because this is part of what's happened with our business. And in looking at other cities, as I've talked with our peers, 2 weeks seems to be a standard. I would like to do better than that. I would really like us to offer him a month of severance. So that is one of the decisions that I need from you. Now, an understanding is that a severance would have to come in talking with our lawyer. In order to offer a severance, it comes with a waiver that you'd have to agree to sign. Correct me if I'm wrong in the time.
That is correct.
So, presuming that he'd be willing to sign the waiver, I'm requesting that we offer that employee a month of severance.
How many years of service does that employee have?
18 months, not quite 2 years. Is that correct?
I believe so, right around there.
September 22.
Okay, so it would be basically 2 weeks per year of service. Seems a little conservative, but
I'd be open to more. I want to take care of the employee, but I also don't want to overstep.
Is he allowed the option to apply for any of these other positions?
Yes.
So he's not being terminated?
His position has been eliminated. In the legal world, that's how it differentiates. I can't speak to the legal implications of the difference.
Yeah, Mayor and members of council, we would just usually refer to it as just a separation from employment due to the reorg. Yeah, and just the position no longer exists. It's not a commentary on any performance issues or anything like that. It's purely a function of the position no longer being part of the organization.
Did you have something else in mind?
I would suggest 3 weeks per year of service if we're trying to be, it's a balancing act for us, right? And it's taxpayer funds. But it's customary in the private sector. 2 weeks is pretty standard for a situation like this. I feel like because of the way that it's happening in terms of the situation in the organization prior to this, I feel like 3 weeks is not inappropriate for somebody who's stuck with us through some challenging times.
So that 3 weeks would put it at,
I have to calculate that. It's hard to do math when everybody's watching you. That can't be right. Hold on. Roughly $3,800.
It sets a tone for the remainder of the employees too, the cultural impact. When you're generous, not to a fault, but prudently, can help avoid bad feeling for others who might feel like someone isn't being dealt with the way that they would want them to be dealt with.
yeah, I don't disagree. I would suppose the counter concern to that would be in a future hypothetical situation that's not in the same scenario, that you're setting a precedent that's potentially higher than is standard. But I think we have to just weigh those.
We got no policy now for severance?
Not in this situation.
Do we have any idea, I don't remember us eliminating a position since I've been here, but it certainly may have happened. Do we know when the last position was eliminated?
Having just done the equity report, I'm not aware that a position has been eliminated like this. When positions have gone away, it's usually been because of an accretion of duties, and then the roles have been redefined. And then we've done an internal hire. Correct me if I'm
I
wrong.
think the last one that I recall would have been around 2013. I'm sorry, 2014 or 15.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't be as concerned about a president. I'd be more concerned about loss of goodwill with other employees.
So you'd be in favor though
I'd be in favor of the month, to be honest with you.
of the
Severance.
Well, I had suggested 3 weeks per year, so that would be
So 3 weeks per year? And you were saying 1 month?
Oh, I misunderstood you.
I thought you were
I thought
saying
you were
3
saying
weeks.
only 3 weeks.
Oh, sorry.
I was
3
saying
per
that-
year.
That's different. Let me recalculate.
Should be twice as much, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so. it'd be
Unless you want to prorate it for the part of the year.
7,600.
I don't know, 1 week per year of services seems like what our company does, and then rounding up to a full month seems fair in my mind. But
Yeah.
you got a bigger heart than me.
Your initial suggestion was?
I'm asking for a month, and if you want to be more than generous, I think under the circumstances, I'm not happy with the way that we've had to do this, and I've talked with a lot of folks. John will tell you that I've expressed this isn't the way that I operate. I feel like crap about it. And so if we can take better care of him, I feel better about that. So that's why I was asking for a month, because I thought that would be as good as I could get, but
And Jeremy, yours was 6 weeks, essentially.
if we
If
could get
split-
better,
Split it in 5 weeks. I'm good with that.
is that a consensus?
Trying to
we
figure it
vote?
out. We can vote on that, if you wanna make a motion.
I'll make a motion to offer 5 weeks of severance and benefits through that period.
Second.
Any further discussion? Is that motion in line with what you're thinking? Yep. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
4-1. And then on the chart itself, you need a motion on,
If there's, I can take guidance, but a motion would probably be helpful if you don't have any changes, accept it as it is.
didn't seem like there was any strong feelings of or issues with the proposed changes going forward with. Am I reading it right?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion?
This is something I expected when we had
Yep.
this change in leadership and such in our community. I want to thank Jay for coming on and spending the amount of time spent and doing everything done and with a conscience. So I appreciate that very much.
We have a motion and a second. If there's nothing else, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And then the last thing I have, Mayor and Council, is as part of this, I'm requesting permission to go forward to hire those 2 first positions. They have been written, they were in the packet, the job descriptions are in there, which is an assistant city administrator and an HR generalist. They have been reviewed. Mr. Kamak scored them. And part of the reason we went in that direction, because we're on the cusp of a comp and class, but we didn't want to change present practice for 2 employees. And so we went with the historic practice for these 2 positions scoring.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you very much. We do not have any new business. Staff reports. We have our typical planning project update in the packet for kind of what's coming up, as well as the city council schedule. Council reports, is there anything anyone would like to mention specifically? I don't think so. And with that, City Council is going into closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05, Subdivision 3B, to discuss employment-related claims filed against the city. Here in closed session.